Karl Marx is a name that once shook the world. Without firing a single bullet. He is not a general, nor a politician. He is not even a rich man. But his ideas brought down empires, fueling revolutions and dividing the world for over a century. In his small book, the Communist Manifesto, written with his friend Friedrich Engels, the world is divided into two: the rulers and the workers, the oppressors and the oppressed. He called religion an opium, capitalism a machine of oppression, and the state a tool of upper-class power. His thinking was not just theory. The Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, the Chinese Revolution, and the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union all stem from Marx. But who was he really? How could a poor man living off the handouts of his friends come up with an idea that would shake the world order? And did his ideas really bring justice, or did they become the cause of the greatest chaos of the 20th century? This is the story of Karl Marx, the father of communism, the unemployed philosopher whose writings moved the world. Karl Marx was born on May 5, 1818, in the city of Trier, in the Rhineland region of Prussia, now Germany. His family background was both intellectual and complex. His father, Heinrich Marx, was a well-educated lawyer who had converted from Judaism to Lutheran Christianity to avoid restrictions placed on Jews in Prussia. His mother, Henrietta Pressburg, came from a prosperous Dutch Jewish family. Since childhood, Marx often read books, so his house was full of books. He was known to be intelligent and stubborn. In 1830, at the age of 12, Marx entered the Friedrich Wilhelm Gymnasium in Trier, one of the most prestigious schools in the region. Marx proved to be a gifted student, particularly excelling in languages and writing. By the time he graduated in 1835, his intellectual leanings were already visible. Marx wrote that individuals should work not for personal ambition, but for the greater good of humanity. In 1836, at the age of 17, he entered the University of Bonn, leaving Trier to studying law. But Marx felt bored and was more interested in philosophy and poetry. He transferred to the University of Berlin, where he was strongly influenced by German philosophy, and that's where everything changed. Influenced, Marx read the works of Hegel, a great German philosopher who framed the world in conflict and change. But Marx was not satisfied. For him, Hegel was an abstractionist. The world was not a matter of ideas, but of the reality of human life. He began to think logically. Why do some people work hard but remain poor throughout their lives, while a small number live in luxury? Why does this world exist in a system that reduces most people to mere tools, rather than masters of their own destiny? These questions are not academic. For Marx, they are questions of justice for humankind. This was the beginning of Karl Marx's intellectual journey, which later shook the entire economic system in the world. In 1843, he moved to Paris. Karl Marx married Jenny von Westphalen, leaving the restrictive Prussian environment. Here, cafes, newspapers, and streets were abuzz with radical debate. The city was bustling with political exiles, artists, and workers, an atmosphere brimming with revolutionary energy. Marx began editing Deutsch-Französische Jahrbücher, German-French history, a radical journal aimed at bridging German philosophy with French revolutionary politics. It was during this period that Marx met Friedrich Engels, a partnership that would define his life and intellectual journey. Together, Marx and Friedrich Engels analyzed the social and economic conditions of industrial Europe, going beyond abstract philosophy to confront the real struggles of the working class. Marx's studies of French socialism, English political economy, and German philosophy crystallized into his new revolutionary worldview. In Paris, Marx also began composing writings on the critique of political economy and class struggle. Works such as On the Jewish Question and Economic and Philosophical Manuscripts of 1844 emerged from this fertile intellectual climate. In 1845, under pressure from the Prussian government, the French authorities ordered him to leave Paris. Once again, Marx was expelled for his revolutionary ideas. He and Jenny moved to Brussels, but his time in Paris had changed him, from a young philosopher to a revolutionary thinker with a clear mission: to overthrow capitalism. He and Friedrich Engels, now inseparable, began to formulate a systematic theory of revolution. In 1846, Marx and Engels founded the Communist Correspondence Committee. Its goal was simple but revolutionary: to build an international network uniting socialists and revolutionaries from different countries. Marx and Engels believed that class struggle knew no national boundaries. It was a universal human problem. The years 1846 to 1847 were pivotal. At a simple wooden table, Marx and Engels wrote their first monumental work, Die Deutsche Ideologie, or the German Ideology. In this hundreds of pages thick manuscript, they criticized the Hegelian idealist philosophy that dominated German thought. It was here that a theory was born that would change the face of social science. History is the history of class struggle. Rulers and ruled, landlords and peasants, employers and workers. These conflicts are ever present and the driving force behind societal change. Marx often invited radical figures to his home. The debates lasted late into the night, laughter, anger, and passion mingling in the narrow, cigar-smoke-filled room. He debated with the utopians, rejecting the idea of socialism as relying solely on morals or rosy dreams. For Marx, revolution was not a matter of imagination, but of the real power of the working class. In 1847, Marx and Engels joined a secret organization called the Communist League. This organization, previously known as the League of the Just, consisted of political exiles, radical workers, and revolutionary intellectuals. Marx and Engels accepted the challenge. They knew the world was on the verge of implosion. Economic crisis, famine, and civil unrest were sweeping Europe. A new call had to be born. Early in 1848, in the dead of winter night, Marx and Engels completed a manuscript that would shake the world, the Communist Manifesto. With their legendary opening line, about the specter of communism haunting Europe, they proclaimed a truth, that the history of society is the history of class struggle. Shortly after the manifesto was published, Europe was shaken. The revolutions of 1848 broke out in Paris, Berlin, Vienna, and Milan. People demanded bread, jobs, and freedom. Brussels is also shaking. The Belgian government was suspicious, accusing Marx of sedition. He was briefly arrested, then expelled from Belgium. Thus ended Marx's 3 years in Brussels. But the ideas born in this small town had already transcended prison walls or borders. The manifesto had spread, and the world would never be the same again. In 1849, Karl Marx was forced to emigrate. After being expelled from France and Belgium, he sought refuge in London, the city that would become his permanent home for the rest of his life. In 1850s, London, Marx, his wife Jenny, and their growing family lived in abject poverty. They settled in Soho, a neighborhood known for its immigrant community. Despite these hardships, London also gave Marx something invaluable: stability and freedom. Unlike in continental Europe, the British government did not pursue him with police surveillance or expulsion. To support his family, he worked as a journalist. From 1851 to 1862, he served as European correspondent for the New York Daily Tribune. His articles cover everything from British parliamentary debates to revolutions abroad, war, colonialism, and global trade. Marx spent hours in the British Museum reading room, studying economic history, political philosophy, and statistics. He also continued his political activities, establishing close ties with revolutionary groups in exile. In 1852, Marx and Engels published The 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte, a brilliant analysis of Napoleon III's rise to power in France, and a work that remains one of Marx's most famous political writings. Marx's political influence, so prominent during the upheavals of 1848, had waned by the middle of the decade. Its role in the Communist League dwindled, and in 1852, the League itself dissolved due to state repression and internal strife. If Marx's intellectual life expanded during these years, his personal life remained mired in hardship. The deaths of his children, Guido in 1850, Franziska in 1852, and Edgar, Mush, in 1855, devastated the family. Jenny Marx, his wife, endured constant illness, while Marx himself suffered from recurring boils and liver disease. Only Friedrich Engels' unwavering support enabled Marx to continue his life. In 1864, trade unionists, socialist activists, and radical Democrats convened in St. Martin's Hall, London, to create what would become the International Workingmen's Association, IWA. Industrial capitalism's expansion, rapid mechanization created both unprecedented wealth and deepening exploitation of labor. Political repression. Following the defeat of the revolutions of 1848, reactionary governments tightened control, but working-class consciousness continued to grow. Need for coordination, strikes, labor disputes, and socialist agitation crossed borders, requiring international solidarity. Karl Marx was invited to join the General Council. Though initially hesitant, he soon became the intellectual driving force behind the organization, drafting the inaugural address and the provisional rules. In 1867, Marx published book The First Volume of Capital, a systematic critique of the capitalist mode of production. The First International quickly became a forum for debate and coordination among diverse factions. Trade unionists sought better wages and shorter hours. Mutualists, followers of Proudhon, favored cooperative exchange and gradual reform. Marx worked tirelessly to unify these tendencies, steering the International toward a focus on class struggle and political organization. Bakunin and the anarchists. Mikhail Bakunin clashed with Marx over the role of the state, with anarchists advocating immediate abolition of political authority. National questions, Irish independence, the Polish struggle, and the Paris Commune, 1871, forced the International to clarify its stance on revolutionary nationalism. These disputes culminated in the 1872 Hague Congress, where Bakunin and his allies were expelled, and the General Council was relocated to New York, effectively signaling the decline of the First International. Finally, in 1876, a small and somber gathering in Philadelphia declared the International formally dissolved. Although it only lasted 12 years, it showed that the suffering of workers in Manchester, Paris, or Berlin was part of the same global problem. And more importantly, he reconciled Marx's theory in Capital with the real practice of working-class struggle. History later proved, although the First International collapsed, its seeds grew in various forms: trade unions, socialist parties, and even subsequent internationals. Capital continues to be a reference, opening the eyes of many people that behind the facade of modernization and industrial machines, there is hidden a system that stands on the sweat and suffering of millions of workers. Karl Marx died on March 14, 1883, in London, at the age of 64. He died in his office after years of illness and personal suffering due to the death of his wife and children. His funeral at Highgate Cemetery was attended by only a handful of people, about a dozen friends and loyal followers, including Friedrich Engels. Although he died a humble man, Marx's legacy far outlived his life. Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto became fundamental texts that shaped socialist, communist, and labor movements worldwide. His friend Friedrich Engels continued to disseminate Marx's works, compiling his unfinished manuscripts and ensuring that Marx's name would not be lost to his own death. His ideas on class struggle, exploitation, and the critique of capitalism continue to be both inspiring and controversial. Until now, more than a century after Marx's death, Marx's ideas remain a matter of debate, some praising them as liberating ideas and others criticizing them as utopian ideas. But one thing is certain: Karl Marx may have died in silence, but his ideas made him one of the most influential figures in human history. Without ever being a national leader or holding a formal position, his ideas reached all of humanity, shaped political order, and shifted the map of world history. Karl Marx may not be a revolutionary hero, but he is a mirror that reveals the dark side of the system we have long taken for granted. And for that reason, his name will never truly disappear. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Relic Saga channel. If you have any other interesting characters to discuss, please share them in the comments.